Everybody's going to the party, have a real good time.
Hey folks, this is Irotron. Thank you very much for joining us tonight as we're firing up the Xbox to play some Terraria. Guys, it's time to give away some items. If you're not familiar with our program, this is what we do. If you like the video, you subscribe, you leave us your gamer tag and tell us what you're looking for. I'll send you a message on Xbox Live, and we'll get together, we'll play, and I'll hook you up with some sweet items. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the All Items map, and then we're going to start sending out messages to the gamer tags that we have obtained from YouTube. Before we fire up the news, I do want to throw a shout out to Bunny Slayer. He posted on YouTube about a week or so ago and requested that. So, dude, just want to say hello. Thanks for joining the LPC and hope you're doing great. Alright, guys, here we go.
All right, let's go to some of the calls. First-time caller, we go to Flint in Jackson, Michigan. Hey, Flint, thanks for calling.
Hey, you're welcome. I was telling the guy there on the line that I kind of, you validated my thought, what I thought happened to that plane from the beginning.
Yeah.
When you said that you reported that gentleman in North Korea had everybody get their hair cut like him. Well,
how does that tie
I kind of feel like, that pilot, I kind of see him as a hero now because, like, let's say he took everybody up to 40, let's say he was propositioned by his government to deliver this plane to North Korea.
You see, here we are in a show talking about thermonuclear war, and you're talking about, I'm sorry to kind of hit you on this, but this is kind of like the Antichrist unconscious to me. It's like you're talking about something that's, we're talking about whether the human race is going to exist or not, from a war they're not anticipating, that's been seen by many seers, and you're talking about something that happened in the first hour with the airline flight. As tragic as the Malaysian airline flight is, that's not really the subject we're on now. Is that more important than whether we have a thermonuclear war for you in another 3 years and 7 months, sir?
Or 13 years, John.
Yes, or 13 years. Yes, hopefully we can, it's almost like that kind of thing is like, where was this person for the last 2 hours? I mean, it's like he was in CNN La La Land because CNN and all the other news people can't let go of this. It's almost like news porn that they're going on and on and on, like it's an O.J. Simpson trial all over again. This is the kind of news that most of you are listening to, who are feeding you an unconscious perception of what's going on in your world. And if you don't snap out of it, it's going to burn you up. Sorry to say.
Do we have choices here?
Absolutely. We have a choice to awaken. We can do it now. It's always available. The mind is always in its habits locked in time. It's obsessing about the future, or it's obsessing and mooning about the past. But meditation has taught me that there's another state of consciousness, a state which I call the eternity of the present. And in that state, you're never too late or too early, because there's nothing about time. When the mind's silent, one's not in time. One is in another state of consciousness. And out of that consciousness is a bright and loving intelligence that we're all connected to. And what is needed is more and more of us need to connect with that and not be lost in trifles like the caller was lost in, but to really deal with, what is this treasure that I've lost? Why do I not remember myself? Why do I just borrow everybody's stuff and make it my own? Meditation gives you choice. Otherwise, your choice is passively unconscious, and other people make choices for you.
If we didn't have the prophets that we've just talked about mentioning this Third World War, would you be as concerned as you are? Because
No.
to me, it's shattering that they've predicted it, and they've been right about past things.
I would be a fortunate man that wouldn't need to be ringing an alarm and upsetting millions of people who are listening to this right now, but it's necessary. There is smoke in your house. And as a prophecy scholar and also somewhat of a seer myself, I'm part of the same family of these people. I'm Forgive me for being a bit like Jeremiah here, yelling, repent, but remember yourselves, because the time is coming short, not just with this potential for war, but also with your planet going out of balance. I mean, a lot of the prophecies that deal with the Third World War and the War of the Antichrist also use terminology, not only you stepping in it with open eyes, but as Nostradamus and his Mobus Antichrist prophecies describe it, is the unraveling of the world of men, people, and animals. He's talking about, that's his 16th century way and his 16th century French of saying that the natural order of nature, it affects the animals as well as the people, is unraveled. And the way he uses it is the more poetic old version of French word défait. It means an unraveling, a loosening up. And look how the world is systemically falling apart around us. The governments, the banks, the things, the leaders who seem so out of touch with us. Even the new power elite, the new aristocracy, the corporate types who are trying to run the world and struggle to gain dominance over each other like aristocrats of the blood in hundreds of years ago. They don't seem to be at all mindful of what they're doing and where they're taking the world and how there's no future in it. So this unraveling is undergoing, and the unraveling, one of the catastrophes that Stormberger may be talking about, these great catastrophes, is not just the war itself, but what kind of precipitated it.
Sure.
Climate breakdown is going to break down your economy. It's going to create the situation for more extreme politics, more fascists who come into your lives from either side, and it eventually ends in a common theme is that World War III is a World War free for all. It's an unraveling of society and civil activity, a breakdown, kind of a Mad Max moment. Mad Max isn't the post-apocalypse like in the movie. It's what causes the apocalypse in the real prophecy.
Let's go to Cliff, San Antonio, Texas. Go ahead, Cliff.
Okay, I've got a question for John. I wonder if John thinks Israel is likely to try a preemptive attack on Iran, and if so, if Iran will retaliate with nuclear-armed missiles and destroy much of Israel.
Yes.
Iran, I lived in Iran for 3 years, many years back. Iran, long ago, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago, I saw in a newspaper article a statement by a State Department spokesman saying that within 2 years, Iran was expected to have the atomic bomb. So-called experts don't seem to think Iran today has atomic bombs. But
we don't have a lot of time. So I've got to answer your point. The point is that I have been watching, you talk about 30 years ago, that was when the Ayatollahs had just come into power. So you got to remember that the Persian Shah of Iran, the Iranian leader who was the dictator that we supported, before the Ayatollah and the rebellion took Iran out of our sphere of influence, we were actually aiding the Iranians to get nuclear power for peaceful use. I have heard Mossad and other sources ever since say the Iranians are 2 years away. No, they're 3 years away. No, they're 4 years away. I will just say for the prophetic record, Iran is like any other country, like South Korea, like Taiwan, like anyone who's a friend of us, who is gaining the knowledge to be able to make atomic weapons, but they are not building atomic weapons. And who also agrees with me, but Mir Dagan, one of the legendary Mossad heads of Mossad, the Secret Service of Israel, before he was forced to retire because of his criticism of Netanyahu in 2012, this rush to war, this hysteria, had openly done something that nobody does often from a cabinet, even when retiring. He openly went on Israeli TV and news and then went on 60 Minutes in America and told them this was all stupid, that Iran doesn't have the bomb.
Let's have you pick up a little bit more of that, John, when we come right back. Our very first Beyond Belief television program was with John Hogue as our special guest. And you can still watch that for free, 10 days free. Simply go to our website, beyondbelief.com, and look at all the programs. But make sure you look at the one we did with John on predictions. Back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Welcome back, John Hogue with us. John, I do not believe either that Iran has any nuclear capability yet to develop this weapon. They may be getting close, but I don't think they have it now.
Yeah, all the indications I have, and I have contacts in Iran too. I have contacts all over the world that I use in my work. That the power and the access that's possible in the internet, even in nations that block the internet, I find ways. And I just don't sense it. That's for the prophetic record. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I really just don't sense it.
Well, but look at all the pressure points: Israel, Iran, Syria, North Korea, Russia. I mean, maybe Stromberger was right on this one.
Well, yes, and also there's I have to also say there's a lot of Israelis who see that there really isn't a threat of war with Iran. That the war drum's being beaten by the Netanyahu government. It doesn't mean that the Israeli people are in lockstep with him. Over half the people don't think there's any threat of a war with Iran. The other thing too is that this is a geopolitical struggle. The Syrian war is more than just a civil war between sectarian sects of Muslims and Islam. Saudi Arabia is now allying with the Netanyahu government because the Sunni, rather totalitarian dictatorship of the house of the Saudi king, which is our friend, quote unquote, doesn't even let women have equal rights. This kingdom, because it's a Sunni kingdom, has been financing and sending its warriors into Syria on the Sunni side.
That's right.
Many of them are the most successful fighters, which we are supporting now for a few years, are Al-Qaeda. You can see, I see it more in the West than I do in Putin's Russia, a irrationality that it really scares me in the fact that the so-called good guys of the last two wars are now really acting very irrationally and childishly and not really got their feet on the ground about real politics, which is about resources, geography, and Putin has a geographical advantage, and he's going to pursue it to make a point. Don't push us around anymore for 22 years. And I'm wondering then what will be the West's response. And I'm wondering as soon as the 20th of April, around May, when there's all these elections that are going to happen, the European Parliament is going to completely be replaced by new MPs, and it could be as many as 20% of the seats of the European Parliament may go to the fascist parties.
Unbelievable.
So as the West turns fascist, and the Russians, you see, we Americans don't remember this because we never had this tragedy to deal with as a trauma. The last time Westerners encroached on Russia, they lost 27 million people from another fascist, Adolf Hitler, who had Ukrainian fascists helping him do it. So when they see fascists goose-stepping and Nazi saluting around in Kiev, they do freak out. They have a reason, any more than Jews, when they see a synagogue being threatened or painted with stuff, would also freak out because of the trauma of what they've been through. We need to have the compassion. Our leaders, too, need to have the compassion to understand that when they make their geopolitical decisions. One of the great blindnesses that prophecy seems to see again and again is how people always relegate their enemies to some subclass of human. They never try to have empathy. They never try to understand how their enemy ticks. If they did, they might find that there's more they can reach out in friendship than in enmity with that person.
Let's go to Roy in York, South Carolina on the wild card line. Thanks for holding so long, Roy.
Hey, that's all right.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I just studied prophecy and, the Bible, the Quran, and everything else. The Third World War ain't going to be, nation against nation.
What's it going to be?
It's going to be different groups of people, like the multiculturalism.
Well, you know what? You may be partially right there, but it's still going to be the big nations that pull us in on all of this.
Yeah, as much as we want to think, again, and it's very prevalent in the West, that we're different than what we really are. We're still thinking, we're coming together, European Union and all, but there's still, the habit of nationalism is still collectively with us. The habit of national identity, of ethnic identity is still with us. The problems that caused the Balkans to light the First World War are still alive in the Balkans, in the Caucasus, in China, in Western China. These tensions in Kashmir, these things have not gone away. Just because we change our costumes and our politics and our platitudes, so much of human history, it's the reason why prophecy works, is that so much of human history is a repeat through conditioning and habit of the past in our future. When I look deeply into prophetic future, I see the past reflected in it. There has to be a break where enough human beings stop living in the past and creating a future that's the past, returned, and create an eternity of now, a consciousness that is here and now with its full attention, love, and intelligence.
John, as we look at some of the things that Stormberger predicted, and he's a show all by himself on some of the things, how did he do it? I mean, what was that capability for him? Was he hit by lightning? I mean, where did he get this?
Well, it seems that there's not a lot left of his work, because the Nazis actually tried to burn all of his books and pamphlets.
Really?
Yeah, when World War I happened, he had already become famous, and there were publications of his work. And Goebbels, when you see that footage of Hitler Youth burning books, they weren't just burning books of Jews, they were burning books of Stormberger. And so we have just a few fragments left. But what I can gather from the fragments is that he would look at a place in the 1780s, a field where his cows had come out of the forest where he lived to graze, and it just sort of happened that he saw in that field the future. He'd see the railroad, the iron horse and the big iron monster go by. So he'd see it knowing that it wasn't actually there in his time. It was almost like in his mind's eye, he would see it.
Amazing.
He just would start telling people about this. He's obviously not being educated. He probably retained a certain innocence, which is the kind of innocence that empowered Jeanne d'Arc, Joan of Arc, to be also a great seer. I mean, I think one of the best movies that show what Joan of Arc probably really was like was probably Mila Jovovich's The Messenger, Jeanne d'Arc. I highly recommend.
Great job in that.
Yeah, that to me as a prophecy scholar looked more like the way Joan of Arc really was. A little crazy, but also something more.
Yeah. Let's go to Ed in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Hello, Ed. Thanks for calling. Go ahead.
George, John, glad to talk to
Ed?
you guys. Listen, let me run this past you. I want to get your input on it. Now, I've been studying the book of Daniel and book of Revelation. Now, I have accepted Christ as my Savior many years ago, but let me say this. I believe we're approaching the tribulation hour. Is just a heartbeat away from us, and as I understand it, the lawless one, which is the Bible refers to him as the lawless one, most of us say the Antichrist, he'll come to power, and he'll be the man that will ratify the peace agreement between the Israelis and the Arab nations. Now, in order for that to happen, there's going to have to be a conflict that will cause Israel and the Arabs to come to the peace table. But at that time, you'll know who the Antichrist is. Now, the last 3.5 years of that 7-year tribulation, which that'll be the starting of it at that time, when they ratify that peace agreement, they're already talking about building the temple. The last 3.5 years will be the Battle of Armageddon that takes place with the European Union, with the Antichrist going against Israel, Russia with the Persian Empire, and what's left of the Arab nations. You understand? I said what's left of the Arab nations. And the Chinese coming from the east, they'll all try to destroy Israel. God will not allow this. Jesus Christ will come back. He'll destroy all these armies for their efforts. And then the 1,000-year millennium starts, where you live in peace, where Satan is cast off in chains for 1,000 years. We'll all live in peace and harmony. For those of us who have accepted Christ, That's what we got to look forward to on the other side. So
Okay.
it's not all gloom and doom when you look at it that way.
Okay, that's a very thanks for Ed for the quick overview of the Christian point of view of the evangelical Christian point of view of the apocalypse. There is different points of view in the over 300 sects of Christianity. There's the Catholics have a very different view, where it's a crisis in faith in the church. And also, I wrote a book called Messiahs, the Visions and Predictions of the Second Coming, which looked at 33 different traditions of messianic prophecy. And one thing by gathering these prophecies all over the world, one thing I notice is that one thing that everyone shares when they're in their belief system is that we are absolutely the chosen, our guy is the guy, all the rest of you are false. Every tradition says that about everybody else, which means
somebody's right, somebody's wrong. Right?
Or they've all missed, innocently perhaps, but missed the real truth of it. And so I looked into other times, in earlier times, when people were looking for a Messiah figure. And in the book, I look at, like a couple thousand years ago, when people were anticipating a man born in Bihar who would resurrect the Brahmins and make them the masters of the world in Hinduism. They foresaw, 2,000 years before it happened, the Hindu seers foresaw Buddha. But when Buddha came into being, and they said, yeah, that's the guy, he suddenly started saying everybody is a Brahmin, everybody is a higher caste in the spirit, and of course that was totally against the orthodoxy of the Hindus, and they wanted to kill him for it. So what I'm saying is that what you'll see again and again as a pattern is everybody expects the new Messiah to be like the one they know from the past. And the past, just like with wars and with the advent of great teachers, if we use the litmus of the past, we miss the future. And it may very well be as clear as that is to you, and as clear as it is to 32 other Messianic traditions, that there's the guy is the guy. You might all be missing the point.
What's kind of scary about all this, John, though, with all the prophecies from the people you've mentioned, Nostradamus, Storberger, and others, they all believe something's going to happen. That one bothers me.
Yes, it's and yet some hope. I hope is given all of this is that
hope. Where's the hope?
Is that, remember how we were all waiting in 2000 for the end of the world, and how so many of the traditions seem to anticipate that?
Yeah.
Sometimes the collective vision of the past is past-oriented. They're looking, and there's a lot of prophetic bias even in the great prophets. There's a lot. Not only are we potentially biased in how we filter and accept and try to explain their prophecies, but I often think that a lot of times the prophets themselves are not the ones to explain their prophecy. They're the ones to give us, I saw this weird thing, and I'm sharing it with you, and it's up to you, not just of the present, but really it's up to the people of the future who can read those signs rightly and not according to dogma. It's to the people of the times in question. And I would contend that the people who look at this with fresh eyes, as innocent as children, as Jesus would say. Look at it again with fresh eyes and innocence, and not with the dogmas and the anticipations of your religion. You might see the message as it was actually intended by the seers.
Let's go to Arthur in DeWitt, Iowa, east of the Rockies. Welcome to the program, Arthur, and thank you for calling.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it, George. John, and I want to tell everybody that John's done the best research of any Nostradamus scholar that I've ever seen.
I agree.
And I've got to tell you, John, thank you very much. I absolutely agree with your message. And I've studied a lot of spirituality on the mystical side of this, probably for 25 years, George and John. And so I can concur with what John has coming up with. And in fact, I would add to that the prophecy from the ancient messengers, prophecy is given so that the prophecy will fail. And that basically what we need to do, regardless of what the dogmatic recitation is from all these different religions, or, it doesn't matter if it's Hindu, it doesn't matter if it's, Christianity and the multiple sects that are associated with that, or Buddhism, or Taoism, or Confucianism, they all have that one direct connection with our direct connection with God. And what comes up with this in the study that I found is that all of this is absolutely turn backable. We can turn it around. But what we need to do is to have that revolution that John's talking about, the revolution of higher consciousness, and we need to have these tools. And John, I wanted to throw this one out to you. My study basically came up with an anagram for sword, and that you see repeated many, many times throughout spiritual texts all over the place, that it's an anagram for the spoken word. So that would be prayer, along with the meditation, along with the visualization, but it's also the understanding of the laws and the rules, because the Antichrists are using those rules and laws against us. So if we can get past our dogmatic limitations, then we'd be able to embrace these concepts, pull down this help and assistance that we need from the spiritual realms, and go forward with it. So have you seen that as well in your studies?
Well, what I have seen is that the Antichrist is misunderstood as a person or a force or an intelligent planning thing. It is simple unconsciousness. It is a shadow of consciousness, just like a light shining on me casts a shadow on the wall. The shadow will move along with me, and I might mistake the shadow for being, as Plato tried to explain his commentaries, I might think that shadow is alive, but it only exists because I'm unaware of me casting that shadow. The consciousness is unaware of itself, and when it becomes aware that this shadow is not some dark creature on the wall, it's, to use the metaphor, it's me reflected in my unconsciousness, then the shadow starts to disappear. And then you realize, or at least in my case, I would just say that in prayer, in visualization, in the more deeper layer of that is asking who is doing the visualization, who is doing the thinking, who is having the spiritual experience. For me, the core of meditation is asking a simple question: who am I? Every moment, like a pulse, like a mantra, waking and sleeping. Who am I? Who is having the experiences? Who is saying they're a being of light? Who, and the layers and layers of this are peeled until a certain point comes where there's no more layers to peel, and then the reckoning and the revelation.
John, if you see any more possibilities, get in touch with us. Sounds like we're getting really close to something.
We are. We could be, I think, look out, everybody, for April and May, and then again October, November, as the real dire times of predictions, of this year. I talk about it at great length in my recently published book, Predictions for 2014, which is available on Amazon, Kobo, and Nook tablets, and also the expanded Stormberger edition is available at HoagProphecy.com.
Fantastic. John, thanks again. Always a pleasure. When we come back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM, how to pray for a financial miracle. Who do we turn to for help, especially financial help? In a moment, James Paris back with us. He'll tell you who on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. Well, that was a scary couple hours, wasn't it? James Paris, author of 24-plus books, editor-in-chief of ChristianMoney.com. He regularly appears as a financial commentator on a number of radio and television shows nationwide. By the age of 30, he was a multimillionaire. By the age of 40, he was broke. What the heck happened? Here's James Paris back on Coast to Coast. Boy, what a roller coaster you have been on, James.
Yes, sir, it sure has been. Great to be with you tonight. I've got a pot of coffee on, my wife, and the dogs are asleep, so it's just you and me, pal.
You got it, all the way. Tell me what happened, exactly what happened. How'd you make that money? How'd you lose it?
Well, in my early 20s, I became a stockbroker and was very, very successful at it. Ended up opening my own brokerage firm, which went nationwide. And there I was at the age of 30, worth millions of dollars, published author, traveling around the world. And I did what a lot of people do. I sort of lost control of the day-to-day management of my money. And my brother was my accountant. And I figured, well, I can trust my brother. He's family. and let him take over literally, the ongoing management of my own money and our business's money. And my accountant came in and explained to me that there was over $100,000 missing during one of our meetings. And one thing led to the next, George, and we uncovered over $2 million of embezzlement, which represented, literally all of our operating capital was gone, and it was my own brother. And if you can imagine not only losing all of your money, I mean literally going from one day to the next, and then it's your own brother.
A double whammy.
What a moment.
Oh, my gosh. What happened? Did you end up prosecuting him, or how'd you handle that?
Well, oddly enough, most people don't know about this, but embezzlement is a rarely prosecuted crime. And in this case, I went all the way up to the FBI, and no one would prosecute him. This was, of course, after 9/11, and so they told me they had bigger fish to fry at the FBI, and the local police said that this case is really too big and complicated for them to get involved with. So there I was, left with no criminal prosecution, but I did sue my brother civilly, and I got a judgment for $4.7 million, which I never collected because I ended up in bankruptcy, and then the bankruptcy takes that judgment as an asset of the bankruptcy, and so I never saw a dollar from it. But it was a moral victory to be able to prove that he did embezzle the money and sort of clear my name in that sense.
Oh my gosh! And you've recovered somewhat.
I'm in great shape today, and my life it really is. It has never been better than it is today. I just finished my second-degree black belt. I have a sailboat that my wife and I spend a lot of time on. I am a lead trumpet in a professional big band.
Oh, very cool.
I'm doing all these great, wonderful things, living my dream. And, as much as I thought I was happy before and that I had it all when I had all the money, I really have a much better life today. And the book just outlines all of the miracles that brought me to where I'm at. I mean, literally sitting in a beautiful home that we were able to pay cash for, having a sailboat, which was a lifelong dream, to have a boat, have the time to enjoy it, to go back to my passion of music. People have asked me, do you think that God caused you to lose everything so you could have this happen? I don't think that's what happened. I believe that God allowed me to, working through the process, to actually turn this into a good situation. Even though it may not have meant to be, it has given me an opportunity to reinvent my life, and I haven't been happier.
Do you think, Jim, that everybody needs to hit rock bottom in order to change and grow?
I don't think you have to hit rock bottom, but unfortunately, I don't think most of us are willing to listen to God until we do hit rock bottom. And that's sort of one of the lessons that I learned in all of this is, I was always a spiritual person. I was always a person that believed in prayer, but I didn't really have, I believe, a complete understanding of what prayer is. I would pray, as a spiritual person, but it was more like a one-way conversation, George, where I would talk to God, but I wouldn't wait to hear what he had to say back. And when you get to the point that you're planning out your own suicide, when you're throwing up blood, which is where I was at, you're ready to listen. And that hopefully will never, I'll never have to reach that point again before I remember that lesson, that prayer is a two-way conversation.
The spirituality, did you have it when you were younger?
Yeah, I did. I was raised in the church, and I always had a belief that there was a God and that He was my Savior and He was part of my life. But I sort of, to be honest with you, in my 20s, I was doing so well that I honestly did not need God. I mean, as much as I look back and know that at the time, I didn't really process it in that way. I know that that's what was happening now that I look back in retrospect, that I really was doing so well financially, I didn't have a reason to have God in my life. And so I probably had a very, very minimal spiritual life during those years, and that's what led to my downfall, I believe.
I was going to say, maybe had you had that kind of spiritual outlook, it might not have happened to you this way.
It's hard to know, and when you look back in life, when you look at the tragedies, of course, at the moment, you just you just wish you were in a different place and it wasn't happening to you. But when you look back and you see how these tragedies were able to make you a better person and give you opportunities to change your life, you can really realize and see the blessing that was there at the time. You know, if I hadn't lost all the money, I'd probably have a lot more money than I have today, but I don't think I would be any happier. In fact, I might have died already of a heart attack.
Yeah.
That's the kind of pace that I was keeping up. And so it was an opportunity for me, like I said, to reinvent myself, to go back to many of my core passions like the martial arts and music and sailing, and to be able to spend time with my wife and my children and find a new path, a better path, a more healthy path with my life.
Let's get into some of the various aspects, James, that people have been going through over the last 6 years, let's say since 2008, when we started hitting the bump in the road. It's not easy for a lot of people out there, is it?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's nothing like losing your home to foreclosure, and we lost our home to foreclosure. And I'll remember probably the lowest point in my life was when, at that time, my youngest daughter was 5 years old. And she came walking into my office at the house, and she looked up at me and she said, "Daddy, Mommy and I have been praying. Are we going to be able to keep our house?" This is a 5-year-old. And I closed the door after she left, and I cried and wept harder than I'd ever wept in my life, wondering what was happening to me. And here's a 5-year-old kid asking her dad, "Are we going to be able to keep the house?" And, you know, with all the foreclosures that we've been through, George, there's nothing so horrible for a family than to lose their home. You know, the family, you know, there's neighbors.
Yeah.
There, it's like you're losing, the kids lose the school they're going to. All of their friends are in the neighborhood. You've built these relationships over the years. And as a man especially, you know, looking at yourself as the head of your home, that you're supposed to be the provider, that may be a sexist thing to say, I apologize, but, you know, to a man especially, you know, to lose the family home. And there's so many people that have gone through this. In fact, you know, if you just Google the phrase, you know, suicide, killed family, there's so many men who have committed suicide and killed their family as well because they couldn't pay the bills. I mean, that's literally the point of desperation that they reached, that they thought my family would be better off dead than to be in the financial predicament that we're in currently. So the foreclosures, the bankruptcy. When I went through my own bankruptcy, George, I saw a man who was 90 years old walk up to the judge, and he was steadied on both sides by his 2 adult children, and he began to cry as he explained to the judge that due to medical bills, he had to file for bankruptcy so he didn't lose his mobile home. And this was a man that was losing more than money. He was losing his soul as he stood up there and cried because, you know, there's a generation that just looks at bankruptcy in a different way than we do today, that it's literally like the greatest humiliation or failure you can have as a person. So many times these financial losses, George, really represent more than just a loss of money. People literally lose their soul, their heart, and their life in many cases.
They sure do. You know, I've been following this Malaysian Airlines disaster, and apparently the pilot had an affair, but his wife had said, "Hey, I'm done with you."
Alright guys, thank you very much for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think about the news feed that we were streaming there. It's pretty interesting. Anyways, guys, if you'd like to receive some items, you know what to do. Follow the instructions in the description. Also, if you like the social media thing, head over to our Facebook page. We can chat on the go. We also have listed our BBM pin so that you can, you know, join in a group chat, all that good stuff, and maybe even join our BBM channel. Anyways, guys, have a wonderful night. We'll talk to you soon. Hoorah!
Rock like this, rock like that. Go ahead and get your grown man on. Drop it like this, drop it like that. Go ahead and get your grown woman on. Give me a bag of good and a bunch of tricks, cause everyone too tough to be rocking like this. So come on, shake the load up, come on, shake loose, shake. I got a busy yet and I can't miss my chance. Cause shorty looking too good with the way she dance. So come on, shake the load up, come on, shake loose, shake.